So if the plan is, as Charles posited, that we need to find these people like the Catherine Mayers of the world who are running Wikipedia and running NPR and, ideally remove them from these leadership positions where they can poison and toxify the industries that affect our information our consumption and affect our young people as they go through college, we're not doing very well. And that brings me to Columbia, where you may have seen there are a couple things going on. Columbia University in New York. There was a hearing on Capitol Hill yesterday, and they were cross-examining the president of Columbia University, much as they did with the president, Claudine Gay of Harvard, and the MIT president, and so on, a few months ago, leading to Claudine Gay ultimately getting pushed out after her plagiarism scandal was then unearthed. And Dr. Namat Minouche Shafiq, the president, was not about to fall into the same trap, or so she thought. She tried to sound reasonable. She did her level best to sound like a normie, but it started to fall apart quickly on cross-examination. So here's the answer she gave to Ilhan Omar, by the way, whose daughter has just been suspended from Barnard, which is right next to Columbia, for what she's doing on the Columbia campus. So Ilhan Omar, you could make the argument, maybe shouldn't have been the one questioning since she's got a daughter directly involved in what's happening on Columbia University's campus. So Ilhan Omar decides to question Shafiq about the nature of the protests on Columbia's campus. And here was Shafiq's first claim. Take a listen.
One of my colleagues asked you, have you seen anti-Muslim protests on campus?
I have seen, we have had pro-Israeli demonstrations on campus.
No. But just
not,
a protest that was against Muslims.
No, I have
you
not
seen one against Arabs?
No, I have not.
Have you seen one against Palestinians?
No, I have not.
Have you seen one against Jewish people? Have you seen a protest saying we are against Jewish people?
No, I have seen.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. There has been a rise in targeting and harassment against anti-war protesters because it's been pro-war and anti-war protesters is what it seems like, correct?
Correct. There has been.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so there she is under oath saying she has not seen a protest that's anti-Jewish on Columbia's campus. Au contraire, because Elise Stefanik arrived with the receipts. Listen to this.
And Dr. Shafiq, you realize that at some of these events, the slurs and the chants have been F the Jews, death to Jews,
Yep.
F Israel, no safe place, death to the Zionist state, Jews out. You don't think those are anti-Jewish?
Completely anti-Jewish, completely unacceptable.
So you changed your testimony on that issue as well? So there have been anti-Jewish protests?
I didn't get to finish my sentence. So what I was going to say was there were protests that were called
That's not what you were asked. You were asked, were there any anti-Jewish protests? And you said no.
So the protest was not labeled as an anti-Jewish protest.
I'm not asking what it was labeled.
Anti-Israeli government policy.
The question wasn't what it was labeled.
But anti-Semitic incidents happen, or anti-Semitic things were said. So I just wanted
It is
to
an
finish.
anti-Jewish protest. You agree with that? You change your testimony?
Congresswoman, anti-Jewish things were said at protests, yes.
Thank you for changing your testimony.
Wow. Look at her bob and weave, Charles. She's caught red-handed, and I firmly believe if Elise Stefanik had not brought the receipts, she would not have amended her testimony to clarify maybe the death to Jews thing was a little anti-Jewish.
It's so alien to me that anyone would try to cover that up, right? I mean, if you watch people who are being cross-examined in a courtroom, in a criminal trial, when the price that they will pay if they don't convince the world or the jury of their narrative is conviction and punishment, you can comprehend why they might lie, dissemble, try to wriggle out of the conversation. But in that circumstance, it's really insidious. I mean, why would you do that? She didn't seem particularly surprised by Elise Stefanik's receipts, as she put it. She seemed to know that had happened. So why mischaracterize it in the first place? I mean, Ilhan Omar actually did not do anyone a favor by essentially badgering a witness that seemed friendly and giving her an excuse to say, well, I didn't get to finish my sentence and I was being asked narrow questions and so forth. But this is the thing that I find the most alarming about this. It's the root question here. It's the same root question that I had after I saw the testimony from the presidents of Harvard and Penn and MIT. Why? You're in front of Congress. You should understand that the behavior and the rhetoric that we're discussing is abhorrent. Why not just concede what we can all see, what Elise Stefanik had notes confirming, and then debate what it is that should be done about it? It's reasonable to disagree as to what the environment should be like on a college campus. Where does free speech start and end? How much do you want colleges, especially private colleges, to be superintending protests and so on and so forth? But they just can't get past the first hurdle. And I think this comes back to what we were discussing in the previous segment, which is ideological fanaticism. I think at some point, universities, and especially those who have risen up in the universities, have come to believe, or at least to promise fealty to, a bizarre ideology that sorts everyone into oppressor or oppressed, puts them in a hierarchy, and will not brook any evidence to the contrary, sees any discussion to the contrary as a threat. And I think that's what we're seeing here. And it underscores why it is so important for us to get rid of that and go back to the pursuit of truth and equality as it was conceived by the great thinkers, not people who came up with their frameworks 10 minutes ago.
She reminded me, we don't have cats, we're dog people, but my friend had a cat and I was with her one day when she was taking the cat to go to the vet. And you try to get that cat into the little carrier, a house cat. And I mean, it is like they get super cat strength. They're more like tigers. The claws are in like, no, I'm not going there. And that's what she reminded me of. No, it wasn't anti-Jewish. Death to Jews, it could be ambiguous. Only when pressed did she have to say the death to the Jew thing was a little anti-Jew. Okay, you got me there. But the protest itself, I'm sure, Jim, was absolutely lovely. I'm sure it was rainbows and unicorns, and everyone was saying, Yahem Israel. I mean, it's like, who does she think she's kidding?
Megyn, the rainbows and uniforms were at the LGBT rally just down the street, actually. That's you're mixing the two up there. That was a very frustrating exchange to watch because you got the feeling that the university president, sensing the trap, she could see the trigger and the claws that were about to come up, wanted to indicate that she as a university president did not approve of some of the chants and stuff like that. And Ilhan Omar's questioning was very much, yes or no, I'm not going to let you finish. And clearly, Congresswoman Omar wants us to believe that the major problem we've seen on college campuses over the last 6 months or so has been an explosion of anti-Arab, anti-Palestinian, and anti-Muslim nasty rhetoric and violence and threats and all that stuff. Excuse me, I couldn't swallow that even describing that. And this idea that, maybe there's some anti-Jewish stuff here and there, but really you got to look out for that anti-Muslim bias on Ivy League college campuses. No, that's exactly, it's very much the opposite. Now, and she also kept saying, were there any protests that were, touted as anti-Jewish? Well, very rarely did the anti-Semites come out and say, hey, we're holding a big anti-Semitic rally. But no,
who else hates the Jews?
Yeah, and so what they always do is they say, this isn't an anti-Jewish rally. We're tearing down the menorah on campus because we're anti-Zionist. Wink, wink. Yes. And I understand. I suppose I believe that theoretically you could have someone who is vehemently opposed to the actions of the government of Israel, but that doesn't have any, lurking anti-Semitism under the surface in their soul. I just have yet to meet that person. every single person you ask them.
You'd be, if you were those people rallying and there were a bunch of people hijacking your rally to say, the Jews should die, you might be like, you're not part of us.
Well, the other thing, if you're rallying outside the Israeli consulate to the UN up in New York, or if you're rallying outside the Israeli embassy in D.C., okay, at least you're directing your criticism at an institution of the Israeli government. Notice how many of these protests are outside synagogues, outside JCCs, outside Campus Hillels. Those aren't representatives of the Israeli government, but you know what they have there? American Jews. So at that point, you're kind of like, look, I couldn't find any Israelis, but these are Jews. They'll do. They're just as good. And
they're Jew adjacent. They're Israeli adjacent, actual Jews.
Yeah.
It went on, just not for nothing, but there was one professor who, after 10/7, Joseph Massad, he's the chair of the School Arts and Sciences Academic Review Committee, and he's tenured, who after 10/7, he called the terror attack awesome on Israel, astonishing, astounding, incredible. He couldn't get enough of all the dead babies and children tortured. And when Shafiq was asked about him, she answered, he's been spoken to. He received quite the tongue lashing.
We gave him a stern talking to out back behind the woodshed,
It's in his permanent file now, Jim.
There you go.
Then she tried to claim he'd
probation, no less.
Removed. What is it? Fat, dumb, and stupid. There's no way to go through life, son. They claimed he'd been removed as chair of the committee, but then Stefanik cross-examined Shafiq and got her to admit he's actually still listed as chair. He has not been removed. And actually, his term as chair was already set to end after this semester. So they just waited it out, right? He's got another month to go. They gave him no punishment other than he's been spoken to. It's fine. You can call a disgusting terror attack that took the lives of 1,200 innocents, including babies, as just, you can call it wonderful and inspirational and all the other adjectives I listed. Awesome. No problem. That's the same person who's not really seeing anti-Jewish protests exactly on campus. As we approach another critical election, many Americans are concerned. Recent studies reveal that an astonishing 56% of citizens report feelings of anxiety or dread about the upcoming election. But I want to tell you about AMAC, the Association of Mature American Citizens. AMAC is more than just a senior organization. During these challenging times, they fight for common sense and for the U.S. to return to traditional American values. Visit amac.us/Megyn today to get an exclusive election year special, a 4-year AMAC membership for just $30. As an AMAC member, you not only enjoy money-saving benefits, but also the AMAC magazine, free Social Security and Medicare advice, a trusted voice in Washington, and a community of like-minded patriots. Take advantage of this election year special, 4 years for $30, and be part of the solution. Join now at amac.us/Megyn. That's amac.us/MEGYN. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.